meeting.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Celebrate Southern Africa. I am so excited to talk to Paul today. Paul Tanner-Tremaine is the author of this fantastic book, The British 1820 Settlers to South Africa. And we'll talk more about that book in a second. But Paul, firstly, how did you get involved with the 1820 settlers?
When I was courting my wife, her grandfather had a book, and he said to me one day, did I know that Janet was a descendant of the 1820 settlers? So I said, okay, lend me the book and I'll go through it, because I was interested in putting the family tree together at that time anyway. But he would not part with his book. And I found out many years later, it wasn't actually his, he borrowed it from somebody else. But we hunted and we eventually found the book, and it was called The Bowkers of Farfield, written by Ivan Mitford Barberton. And Janet is a direct descendant of those 1820 settlers. So in reality, that's my only connection to the 1820 settlers. So
where is your family tree then? Where does that go?
My family tree is basically Kent, Surrey, Wiltshire, all in England.
Okay, and then which of your descendants then went to South Africa?
Okay. We're going back in history now a little bit. In 1948, my dad got fed up with the situation here in England with all the governments and what have you. And he took a job to open up a new motor business in Nairobi in Kenya. So he went out there and was there for 6 months, and then the rest of us family followed. So I was 18 months old or something or other, and went out to Kenya on a ship, beginning of 48. We stayed, and I was brought up in Kenya, all my schooling there. As is wont, Kenya became independent. My dad had lost most of his customers in the motor business he had. So he decided that he was going to move. And the year before independence, he drove from Kenya down to South Africa with my brother and went to see VW, because we had the agency in Kenya. And they offered us 2 towns, and one of them happened to be Escort, Natal. So that's where we went to. We ended up in Escort, Natal.
Oh, wow. What a long drive all the way down from Kenya all the way down to South Africa. Wow, that must have been a journey. So I'm not of 1820 settler stock either. My great grandparents had a fish and chip shop in County Durham, and they decided to move to South Africa after my grandfather was born. So my family's been in South Africa, kind of in another way, but a lot of South African, English-speaking South Africans specifically, have their connections in the 1820 settlers. So let's go back to why the 1820 settlers happened. What was going on in England that suddenly made all these people want to leave?
In 5 years before, in 1815, there was the wars in Europe, and not the Battle of Trafalgar, Wellington, those sort of wars.
Napoleonic Wars.
Napoleonic Wars and all that nonsense. And by the end of those wars, there were a lot of soldiers returned to England who now looking for a place, looking for a job. And of course, the country, I think, went into a bit of decline, and people were looking, well, what can we do, and so on and so forth. At the same time in South Africa, the British had taken over the Cape in 1806, and they were trying to grow it and get it a bit better. And they wanted to expand the borders up through the Eastern Cape. But they came up against the resistance of the Pondos and the Zulus and all the others, Xhosa. So somebody came up with a bright idea. Well, why don't we get a whole lot of these farmers from England who are looking for jobs and ship them out there, give them 100 acres of land per person, Now, if you think 100 acres in South Africa is nothing, but here it's a big farm, and they can pay £14 a family and £5 for each extra kid as they're shipping out there. So they thought, good idea, and the government voted £50,000 to get this lot going. They had about anywhere between 80 and 90,000 response and applicants to get onto the lot to go out there. And of course, this just blew the government's mind. They had to create a scheme, and they cut it down to roughly 4,000 people. In other words, there was about 1,300 families and odds and sods and children and what have you, made up. Nobody's got an exact number, but between 3,500 and 3,800 went out on the 27 ships. At the end of 1819 and landed in the Cape in March, April, May, June and onwards in 1820. They were then allocated lands in the Albany district, in other words, what they call the Sunshine Coast of the Eastern Cape, Bathurst and Port Alfred and Grahamstown. They allocated the Bavianskloof Gorge area for the Scottish parties, and Clan William up in the Western Cape on the western shore for the Irish contingent, to keep the people together that knew each other and so on. But it didn't quite work out. The Scots got on very well with themselves up near Fort Beaufort, no problem. The Irish argued completely about the place that they were given because they couldn't do anything. It was like a desert. So 3/4 of them asked to be shipped across to the Grahamstown area, and they did. One of the ships had a problem in Simonstown, and they offloaded the people to Caledon. So there was 2 or 3 parties that went there. So they were spread all over the place.
Wow.
Eventually, the big lot was in the Eastern Cape in Grahamstown area.
Yeah. So the circumstances in England must have been horrific for people to then say, well, I'm going to get on a ship and probably never see my home country again. Yeah. It was very brave of them.
It was in many ways. One thing that did happen, well, I know from the Bowker side, from the books and Janet's family and so on, is that old Miles Bowker, he had 9 sons at the time, I think, and 2 daughters. One daughter, one was born on the ship in Cape Town. And he realized, he was a gentleman farmer in Wiltshire, also originally from Morpeth up in Northumberland. But he was a gentleman farmer, and he realized that there was no way that his sons could make a decent farming living where they were at that time. So he thought it was a good idea, and he got on to created a party of 23, his family, and got onto one of the ships to come out.
So you're mentioning about the parties. So how big were the parties, and how did they choose who was going to lead the party? Is it just someone who put their hand up, or were they kind of assigned?
It was somebody who put their hand up, who the government thought, yes, they could run an organization. Now, Bowker's party had 23, which was one of the smaller parties. Okay. I think Wilson's party was round about 420.
Wow.
Okay, so it varied, but Wilson's party predominantly came from the London area. So there was a lot there that would join up. There was a lot that came through from Nottingham, all the framework knitters, and they went to Clumber in the Eastern Cape. They were all there together. But what also happened was a lot of the churches thought that, right, this is an ideal opportunity to pay £15 to get rid of these families that are sponging off the church funds. So they subsidized their travel, and effectively got them out of their parish, and it wasn't their baby anymore.
Wow.
So you got all these people of various levels of education and working life and so on arriving together in Simonstown, Cape Town, and eventually in Port Elizabeth, Algoa Bay as it was, dumped on the beach, and then carted up with ox carts up to their allocated piece of land, and effectively just dumped out in the veldt and said, right, here's your four corner posts of your piece of ground. Here's your tents, here's your luggage, have fun, and they left.
So there's also, you mentioned a range of different skills. So people weren't all farmers. I mean, was that the idea originally for them to have been farmers?
Well, giving a person 100 acres of land and expecting him to subsist off what he grows on that piece of land for himself was the original idea. Okay. It was also, they didn't tell the settlers this, but they were going to be the buffer between the tribes coming down from the north who were going to take over the lands. So if you give a person the land, it's his. He's going to fight to look after his own piece of land. That was the theory. Quite a lot of them planted carrot seeds a foot underground, and they sprinkled other bits on the top, hoping it would grow. They had no idea. A lot of them were framework knitters or shoemakers or wagon wheel makers, carpenters, masons. There was politicians, printers, all sorts that were actually given pieces of ground to live on. Now, they had no idea on how to farm. And very soon they asked and got permission to leave their group and party and go to the nearest towns, which was obviously Bathurst, Port Alfred, or Port St. Francis, it was called about the time, and Grahamstown, to move into their own professions. So they split up quite a lot.
And so how long was the agreement that they would farm before the land became their own?
3 years.
Okay.
They had to remain on their piece of ground, the allocated ground, for 3 years. And then they got the title deeds for it. But they only really came through with the title deeds about 1840, 45.
Okay.
So it took a long time for a lot of the people to actually get the piece of paper that said, this is my ground.
Yeah, I can imagine. And also the land, I mean, was that arable? Was it land that was good for farming?
No, it was not good for farming. The Boers who had used some of the lands used them as grazing lands for cattle and goats, because they knew they couldn't plant anything or grow anything there.
So they were really up against it. I mean, they yeah.
Absolutely up against it, and up against the weather. Some of them built their little houses, which were wattle and daub type houses next to the river, which was great. And they started digging and along the shores to make nice soft places to plant the things. And 2 months later, it rained in South Africa and the floods came down, and their houses and their belongings and everything else ended up in the sea.
Oh, goodness me.
There was all sorts.
So really, I mean, if you're of 1820 settler stock, you come from a very brave bunch of people who kind of fought through things they would never have dreamt they would have had to fight through. Because if you came from you came from Liverpool, you came from London, you kind of knew you could see what the worst was that could happen to you because you saw it around you. But now you're going to the other side of the world, you know that you probably will never come back. And you've just heard that this is deepest, darkest Africa.
Yeah. And remember, there were what they called tigers, which were the leopards and the lions and the hippos and the elephants all roaming around that area as well. So they had quite a lot to contend with.
Yeah.
There are stories of some of the kids that got bitten by snakes and actually died, and they didn't know, who'd seen a snake in England.
Yeah, that's awful.
There was all sorts of tragedies.
Yeah, but now that apparently the groups also were allocated. If they were a big enough group, they would get a minister of the church as well that went with them.
Correct.
And they would have played quite a pivotal role, an important role in keeping the community spirit up and keeping people, I don't know, just keeping them going, really.
Yeah, that's quite right. There was a missionary station at Bethelsdorp, just outside, or Uitenhage, I think it is. And the London Missionary Society and the Baptist missionaries were trying to move up and convert the natives to Christianity, which sounds a bit goodwill for them to do. But the ministers didn't have church buildings other than in, like, say, Bathurst. That one was built, I think, 1938. Cape Town had, and the bigger towns in the Cape had. Grahamstown didn't have much, but has now got so many churches that it's known as the city of churches. So the ministers had to travel around a lot to actually see their flocks.
Yeah.
So you get the different Methodist circuits where the minister might be living, say, in Grahamstown, and he would go off on horseback or on foot down through all the farms and baptizing and christening and whatever to whoever they came across. So they were traveling ministers.
Yeah, I'm sure they would have got to know their community and their flock very well. And Sunday school was a new thing in England at that time as well. I mean, but did Sunday school play quite a big role?
I don't know too much about that side. I know some of the farmers set up schools, farm schools, and they had somebody who was capable of teaching how to read and write and so on, because at that time, a lot of people couldn't read or write properly, and trying to teach the kids. And they set up farm schools and tried to teach the farmers' kids from all the way around.
Yeah.
I know I've got some photographs somewhere of the early schools in Bathurst, where there's about 20 kids in the class, and they range from about 6 to 15. All in the same class levels. It must have been very tricky, very difficult to begin with.
Very difficult. So what was the reasons then that people eventually kind of moved into towns, besides the fact that they couldn't make things work? Did many of them end up kind of really struggling and it ended up in poverty, or did they just want to move back into towns, or how did that all work?
Quite a lot were absolutely desperate in poverty, and they were helped out. Some actually got so fed up with the situation that they said, look, we can't take this, I want the next boat home. And there was quite a few, probably 50 or so, that came back to England because they just knew they weren't going to make a go of it. There was quite a lot.
Yeah. So how many altogether ended up going? Now, I know that you've managed to track down for your book and for your website. You've got a number, but you're still short of a few. How many do we know of, and why are those numbers, don't they always correlate?
Okay, going back again, once I started getting involved in sorting out and checking the 1820 settlers, I also got fascinated in how the families intermarried. Because if the families were close, they would know each other. So in the Clumber area, I found that Tars married Davies, and Davies married Elliots, and Elliots married Tars, and so on. And they got, family groups grew that way. But the numbers of those who eventually got there, I managed to get hold of Hockley's book on the British settlers to South Africa. And in there was a list, or his list, of all the 1820 settlers. So I started going through that lot. And then I found, I think it was Morse Jones's equivalent book, and he had different names and different numbers. Then Colin Turing's book had another list of settlers, which quite honestly is a pretty good book, but it had so many errors. Now, was this a settler? Was it not a settler? Dee Nash then came out with her Settler's Handbook in 1980 something or other, which was now her view on what the settlers were, because she'd gone to look at all the agents' returns in the archives in Cape Town. So I had about 4 or 5 different sets of names. Now, the only way to sort this out was to put them all in one database and tick them off. So going into the database, I have about 3,800 men, women, and children.
Wow.
Okay. Now, I know about 400 of those we will never find. because they may have arrived under somebody else's name, because there were people who, instead of getting on the ships, they decided, no, they're not going to go. So the agent just took the next person off the street. Oh, to save the paperwork you've been paid for, get on here. And for the next 2 months, you are Mr. Jones. So that was fine. It gave some other sort of problems when he got there in the land allocation. He's not Mr. Jones, I'm actually Williams. Well, we haven't got any land allocated for Mr. Williams. Bye-bye. You know, so it created all sorts of problems with the way they went through. I've got the records of the Cape, which all those books I have digitally. And going through those, there's all the ship's returns as to who they had on board. And that didn't tie up completely with what Dee Nash had in her book. And she'd looked at the agent's returns that were returned when they arrived in South Africa in Cape Town. So those two never met up. There were people that, as I say, changed their name on the way because they wanted to leave their bad name behind in England and start afresh as somebody new. So there's a whole lot that we'll never find.
Oh, that's such a shame in a way, isn't it?
It is. But then again, because they couldn't read or write, somebody might have said, well, what's your name? It's Smith. Now, did they write that down as S-M-I-T-H or S-M-Y-T-H or S-M-I-F-F or whatever? It's whatever was written. So there could be families out there which didn't tie up with what was written down on the original shipping things. But that's been the fun. And as you see, I think I've got 2,900 and something or other that I know of that have gone down. I also know of a couple of other families, but they won't give me the info because they were keeping the info. They want to write their own book. They don't want me putting all the stuff on who they were and where they came from up on the internet before they've made their money out of their book. Fair enough. So there's some that we will never actually get.
Oh, I'm very sad. I'm very sad about that. But I know that there will be families in the UK who will probably research their family tree and go, well, there's an uncle here that just dropped off the face of the earth. Maybe that could be a connection. And that's probably the only way that you could maybe unravel some of that stuff.
Well, I have unraveled some like that. And some of it has been unraveled for those people by using the website. I've actually had some funny situations. I had a lass in Johannesburg years ago who was interested in getting the info on her family. And she was a direct descendant of 1820 settlers. So I captured what I could, built up a report for her and sent it back to her. In her office, she was sitting looking at this, and the guy that was sort of in the next desk said, what's that you're glued into? And he had a look and he said, why have you got my name in there? Now, these two had been sitting side by side in an office in Johannesburg, working for 4 years, and they did not know that they were second cousins.
Amazing.
So you get things like that. I had a call 7, 8 years ago, about 2015, 2016, somewhere there, from the company that does the Long Lost Families TV shows here in England. And they asked if they could use my website and have permission to use some pages on the next show coming up. And that they had used it and tracked down a family in Cape Town and their relatives in Pretoria. And one of the relatives in Pretoria had given up their daughter for adoption 50 years before. And she happened to be over here and wanted to know if anybody could find out her family. So that helped that one down. And then this is very recent. Sue Mackay sent me an email on Monday and said, had I listened to the BBC Radio 4 show on Saturday Live? Because there was a chap there who was doing the same thing and trying to find his birth family. He knew his birth mother's name. He'd been told that they were missionaries in the Belgian Congo for the Baptist Church, and he was trying to track them down. Well, he eventually found that his mother left Port Elizabeth to come through to England. And he suddenly said, why Port Elizabeth? Maybe they were in Africa. So he did a Google search, and after a couple, he found my website. Not only did he find his mother and all the family, but he found he had 2 sisters as well.
Oh,
So this was a story on the radio Saturday, just a couple of days ago.
wow, that's amazing. So the website, was that an idea at the very beginning, or did that just kind of develop when you realized that people were looking for information and it gave you an opportunity to put it out there?
I was messing about with websites in South Africa because I was in the computer game and it was something fun to do. I was also messing about with family history and trying to write a program to trap it, and then eventually found a decent program which I captured some of my family and most of Janet's family. That was the early days. When we came over here, we had, instead of dial-up modems, we had ADSL modems, direct link lines, so it wasn't a telephone line that you were ringing up a number to connect to. It was a lot better. And my son said to me, he said, why don't I start a website? He can get it hosted cheap. So we said, okay, fine. And at the time, I had probably about 6,000 people in my database.
Wow.
And somebody in New Zealand, Corin, I can't remember her name, Karen, somebody, had sent me a lot of info and said, oh, she wished that she could see what else I'd got that might help her. So we put all this together in my mind and said, all right, I can find a package that will do it nicely for me, and we'll put it up as a website. So it started that way in December 2003. I think I launched the first version with about 6,000 or 7,000 people in it. That went fine until 2013, and some of our friendly bods out there hacked it to pieces. So I had to rethink it and redo it. And what you see out there now is the rethink. And the last update I did was just under 180,000 settlers and their descendants. So that 2,900 settlers has got connections into about 180,000 other people in South Africa and all over the world.
Absolutely. That's amazing, Paul. And so when you discover something, are you able to then connect it and make all the links? Are there still lots of holes?
There are lots of holes. I haven't had so many just recently, but I used to get anything between 30 and 50 emails a week with, you spelt my name wrong, I'm the daughter of so-and-so, or somebody would say, you want some info? Here's my family tree. And it would take me a week or two to capture that and then put it back out there. So all the info has basically been given to me, or what I have researched myself, because I try and prove what is given to me to make sure that they've actually got it right.
Yeah.
And also from books that I've acquired. Now I've got about 80 books on settlers and South African settler interests and so on. So
that's amazing. That's
there's
amazing.
Info there. And the biggest problem is I know I've seen the info somewhere, but I can't remember where. So I have to write it down when I can. So as the emails come in, I try and process them. I capture everything locally on my computer, make sure it's correct, and then I export it and publish it up to the website. So even though I'm effectively updating my data every day, every second day, I only update the websites about once every 2 to 3 weeks. At the moment, with this problem, I can't concentrate long enough because I can only use one eye to see close. And I don't want to make a mess and put stuff up onto the web before I've actually checked it properly. So I've been slowly doing all sorts of other maintenance in the meantime. Still getting the emails come in. And I think after this session, once this gets out, I'll probably get a lot more people send more info in, which could help build the tree, as it were, and help people
absolutely out. Absolutely. So then the book kind of came out of that. Was that right? If people wanted something physical that they could handle?
No, not quite. in about 2015, 2016, we started planning, or tried to plan, what could we do for the bicentenary. And being over here and most of the things back in South Africa, I was trying to get various people down there. Don't know if I can say this, but get off their butts and actually do something, because it's only 3 years until the bicentennial. It's only 2 years between the centennial, and so on. And we put a lot of ideas forward into a committee of about 15 people, but nothing really happened. And then I was told that I should send all my info to this person and he would facilitate it. And I thought, no, I'll do it myself. As I had the info, I could extract most of it direct from my PC, tidy it up, formulate it, stuff off the website, and put it in a book. And I got the book out March 2019, so before the centenary came up, to try and also get others to say, look, this is simple to do a book. You can get it done through Amazon, or there's a couple of others. And you get, once you submit the document, it's published within a week worldwide. And that's
amazing. What I love, Paul, really, I really find it fascinating. And even though it's not my family, you know, kind of connections, I also really love the part at the beginning about, you know, what was happening in England. You know, all the kind of the information at the very beginning is as valuable. And the other thing I love looking through is there's some photographs. And to see people from a long time ago,
yeah,
you just know that that's like, wow, they've got such stories to tell.
Well, you see, those photographs, most of them have come either from what I found in the other books, or people who have written to me. Now, I think over the 20 years or so of doing this, I must have had 4,000 or 5,000 different people from all over the world send me info and photos and pictures. And I thought, well, the best place to do it is to put them up on the website. They give them for me to free, and I put them back up there for free. So I'm even now getting pictures of people who are not even related anywhere to 1820 settlers and fall completely out of the scope of my website. They send me a spreadsheet with their family and all their family photos. You know, can I add it to the website? And I've got to say, sorry, I'm not Ancestry or Find My Past or whatever. This is 1820 settlers.
Yeah, yeah.
But then some of them say, oh, but why have you got a whole lot of Van der Merwes and what have you? And I said, because they married into 1820 settlers, or 1820 settlers married the Afrikaner women, and they could become part of the family. And their descendants are what I'm looking for, not random people. So
yeah, I totally understand
draw
that.
the line somewhere.
Absolutely. But the website is called 1820settlers.com. So that's kind of gives you a clue about what's on it.
Oh, you'll be surprised at some of the questions and the emails that I get. Can I pass a message on to Tanny so-and-so? I can't seem to get a link to her. Well, no, this is a genealogy website. It is not social media.
Yeah, yeah.
So funny.
It's hilarious. It is really good fun. But what I just think it's wonderful that you've made this kind of this life project of yours, you know, for all these years, and you've become the go-to person really for 1820 settlers. And I'm thrilled that I got to meet you and chat with you, and also that I'm holding one of your books, because I absolutely love this book. And I page through it often. And when people ask me about the 1820 settlers, then I always refer them back to this book and to the website. But I find the British don't know much about it. Why do you think that is the case?
They're not interested. You know, the ones that went to America in the 1600s, 1620 on the Mayflower, Americans made a big deal and have grown from the Mayflower people. Yeah, the Mayflower people. There was only 102 of them. We were looking at nearly 4,000 going to South Africa. So that 102 settlers started off in the States. There was only one thing here done up by the Plymouth History Society to celebrate the sailing of the Mayflower from Plymouth. That's all we ever heard.
Yeah. Yeah.
Prior to the bicentenary, I got hold of Hampshire Genealogy Society, Wiltshire Genealogy Society, the Federation of History Societies, Genealogy Societies here. Not interested.
It's really interesting. It's fascinating. But I think it might be our job to start spreading the news and sharing it with everybody we meet so that we can tell more people about it. Because there's a lot of people in this country who do have a family member that went out to the with the 1820 settlers. And I think it's something that we need to be, just make people a bit more aware. So now, 1820settlers.com, and how can people email you and for more information or to send you stuff that's relevant to the 1820 settlers?
It's quite simple, actually. And if anybody goes onto the website and they go onto a person and they say, oh, they've spelt this right or wrong, there's a little button called a comment, and they can click that or a suggestion and actually send me a starter there. But spread it throughout the website. I've got my 1820settlers.com email address. It's paul@1820settlers.com. That gets to me.
Okay.
So there are ways that people can do. They can either go onto the website and answer one of the suggestions or comment fields, or email direct. I try my best to answer each email as I'm updating them to my local PC, because I file them away. I've got emails going back for I don't know how many years. It's quite often you have to look back on to see exactly what they said. So
Yeah.
it's, I try to get responses to all of them.
Brilliant. Thank you. And the book is available through the website. Is it on where else? On Amazon? Where is the best place to buy it?
It's any Amazon. So you can have amazon.co.uk, .com, .australia, .canada, Japan, wherever there's an Amazon. If they search for 1820 settlers, they should find that book.
Okay.
I have it on the main page of the website. There's a little image of the cover of the book. If they click on that, it tells them all about it. And they click on the links there, they'll take them direct to the relevant Amazon. So you can pay for it however you pay for any goods off Amazon, and Amazon guarantee the shipment to anywhere in the world.
Yeah. Lovely. And then finally, on the 11th of June in Wiltshire at the Trowbridge Civic Centre with Celebrate Southern Africa, you'll be there to answer any questions and to sign books. And if people want to buy their book, then they can also come and meet you there.
True.
Fantastic.
I'm just trying to puzzle out how many books do I get printed to take with me, because you don't know
it's
how.
It's a tricky one, isn't it?
It's a tricky one.
Yeah.
One of the other girls who's written a book on settlers into South Africa, she's also going to be there with her book, and she's got the same problem. She doesn't know how many to order and to take down.
Yeah, but it's nice to make contact with people anyway, and just to say hi, and then maybe, have cards available for people to get more information from you. And before we go, Paul, is there anything specific that you're looking for, that there's a real big hole in your kind of information that you would love to just put that little piece into your jigsaw puzzle of the settlers?
I don't know so much about the settlers. I'm just taking that as it comes. I'm not desperately going out hunting for people on that at the moment. Believe it or not, I'm trying to concentrate on my own family tree, because I've got some brick walls there that I'm trying to get through. No, if people find that I've got things on there and they've got their family down to their grandparents but haven't got them and their ones below that, I can add them to it so that they're there. The advantage to them and to me is if I've got them on the website and they are a descendant of an 1820 settler, with a click and a push of a few buttons and pay a little bit of money on PayPal, they can print off a certificate to say they're a descendant of 1820 settlers.
Lovely.
so there's lots of ways of doing things.
That's a lovely, lovely little sentiment to kind of have for yourself, or something nice that you tangible that you can hold on to, which is really lovely. Paul, thank you so much for chatting to me today. I know that I hope that it's opened up the conversation. I also hope that more people are going to get in touch and ask you questions and send you some more information to continue to add to your amazing website. And again, if anybody is interested, go to 1820settlers.com. And then, of course, you've got the book here, which you can also get. It's very recognizable on Amazon as well. As soon as you go into 1820 Settlers on Amazon, it pops up because of the lovely blue cover. So thank you very much, Paul. And I wish you the best of luck. And I look forward to seeing you in June.
Yep. Same to you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Okay. Bye.